Hello, 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 hello. We are here today with Kim Bassett. And, Kim, I want you to give yourself a hype up because what do you do? Where do you live? How many children do you have? What is your business? And the reason I want you to do it is I think one of the things that we as mothers and as women often don't want to say what we are doing because what other people think, are we boosting ourselves up too much?
Yes.
It's like, so our topic today is how motherhood affects business. And this could go anywhere. We haven't planned this, right? We had a little chat 5 minutes before. But Kim, I'm so excited about this topic because I think that it's a topic that every mother and woman could and will get something out of.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many
Yes.
directions, like you said, we can go. But thank you for having me here. I'm so
Please,
excited.
I want you to tell everybody who you are, where do you live, what do you do, what are your passions? Can we get to
Okay.
know you more here?
Yes. My name is Kim Bassett. I am been married for 36 years this year. I have 6 children, 3 daughter-in-laws, 4 grandchildren, 2 boys and 2 girls. I currently live in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States. We do not live on the Strip. Everybody thinks they say Las Vegas and I'm down, in the casinos. We live up in the beautiful mountains of Red Rock Canyon. I literally go out my back door and I see beautiful mountains every morning, and I can see the beautiful valley with all the lights and beauty. I love where we live. I have my background is vast. Corporate America, I've experienced. I have been a substitute teacher for 7 years at one point in my life, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've owned businesses that we've purchased, ones that I've grown from ground up. And currently, my brother and I just sold a business, and I am starting from ground zero again. But this is my life work. And I get to do some amazing things. I get to empower women. I get to speak with them from all over the world. I have an online talk show that you've been on a couple of times, Coffee with Kim, and that's on YouTube. And I get to help others who have love and passion for what they do, whatever it is, whether it's business or just the arts or anything, and be able to shine and be celebrated. And I get to take my love of 12 years of making bracelets that was my transformational mechanism, my love language, and I get to share that experience of opening that and having these visual reminders of what we're working on. So that's a big Reader's Digest.
That was very beautiful. And I want you to dig in a little bit further about exactly what are you doing now? This is your life's work that you are putting together, all the pieces. Before we go there, I want to say hello to Joel and also to Charmaine. Welcome.
Yes.
And we'd love to hear your comments and anything that like sparks an interest for you. So, but Kim, tell us, what is it that really drives you? Because you don't have to do this work. You're like
No.
me. It's like, we're fairly secure. So what drives you to put these pieces together from your life to now?
Because so much of my life, I lived in survival mode, and I didn't have a mother in the upbringing to have the tools that I have now, and being able to trans these tools to my children and to my grandchildren. I've gotten to actually do that a year ago, living with my daughter-in-law and son, and teaching them tools to help them to be more empowered in the things that they want to do in their lives, to be able to not feel like they just have to survive each day, that they get to live it to the fullest. And I get to coach and work with other women, helping them when they just get stuck, right? We get stuck at times in our lives. And I want them to be able to have the tools to move forward. and really be able to be that example to their children, to their daughters, their sons.
I think, Kim, isn't that word survival, for me anyway, it was when I had small children and several businesses at the time, it's like I was really in survival. And this, for me, when you say I want to share these tools, we do have a toolbox that we have accumulated and have experimented with, and we know that works for us. It may not work for our kids, our students, our mentees, our communities, but that really does resonate with me when you say that survival mode. We get to a stage in our life where we aren't surviving any longer, and we go, well, how can we help people not to have to survive?
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit? Because that survival to thriving is it takes many, many stages, and it's also like it's that willingness to go to somewhere that you've never been before.
It is. There's a lot that has to do with the shifts in what I call mind shifts, because I don't believe in mindset, because to me that's very permanent. So I believe in a mind shift. And sometimes even with our children who are in their early 20s, you have to sometimes walk them through it. You think that they get to that age and they should just be able to tell them what to do and they have to go do it. Sometimes they get paralyzed and they don't know what to do. And we have to walk them through it. And what works for me might not necessarily work for them. So I have to teach and give examples of how they can create their own tools.
And I think that for me also is like, how can we be the very best mentor to everybody that we touch, everyone that we see when we get to a certain stage of our life? Because up to a certain stage, we are in survival, even though we don't know it. And I think even so, more so nowadays, when I say nowadays, just in the last, this whole social media, internet, the last 20 years.
Yes.
And we have a lot of things.
There's so much information coming at us now. And, come here, and you get pulled in so many different directions.
So what is one tool? I want to talk about tools for a minute. Mm-hmm. And then I want to go back to challenges. But right now, what would be one tool for you as a mother, as a lady, as a woman, as a person that is now putting together your life's work to share that, so that you have the ability to be able to share tools? What do you think straight away is a general tool that you could go, try this? Because you're not saying this will work. You're saying, try this. This is what's worked for me for this many years.
One of the things that I'm noticing with even my own grown children right now that I'm helping and keep reinforcing with them is alarms. And so, when you and I were growing up, there was a thing called the wake up call when you're in a hotel, right? You would call and say, please wake me up at 6:00, right? And so one of the books I'm currently writing is about our wake up calls. And so I use my phone is one of the things that I used for my transformational mechanism. I would set in alarm because sometimes I just felt like I was just in a trance, right? That survival trance, I call it. And so what I would do is I would set an alarm, a couple times during the day, and it would just go off, and it would be, okay, what am I thinking about right now? What's my self-talk look like right now? My kids will say they want to change something. I said, well, set an alarm. So that's a physical tool that I use.
And for me, what I have done in the past is when I feel that it's more on a bigger picture, I see that tool that you're using is very specific, and I'm going to try that because I tend to steer away from my phone when I know that I'm going into this trance stage. And I've been in it many times. And I think it's a very common thing for women that often we don't know when we are keeping our mouth shut for whatever reason, or when we blurt out stuff for whatever reason to our kids, to our spouse, to our, not so much outside of our family network, but, we have our buttons pressed and we have, logistics to organize. We have people's expectations to meet. And often that either closes us or it opens us without us being aware. And I call that being in our emotional trance.
Yeah. And I love you just said a word for me that I was also going to use is expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I have had to work on that word. I have a word every year. And I remember many years ago, that was a word that I used for a year as the expectations, right? I had these, huge expectations of what I thought a mother should be, what I thought a wife should be. And I almost killed myself, quite literally, with my health doing that. And it seems simple, oh, you just change your expectation, but it's not. You have to be aware. And that's probably the first thing is becoming aware.
And I think with that awareness, there are tools. So
Mm-hmm.
underneath that awareness, and you and I have spoken about this before, what do we drink? What do we
Yes.
eat? How long do we chew? How do we breathe? What are the movements of our body that we make? How do we, as you've already mentioned, how do we speak to ourselves? Like, what is that basis form of that what is the foundation that we have formed? And for me, it's also about really being able to articulate what is of value to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think those values they get lost as we are logistically organizing and waiting, and then having to reorganize to get to somewhere, or even when I one of my kids has had both my kids have got small babies at the moment, and
Mine too.
yes, so don't you think that when our kids have kids, it brings up, and this is what it has done for me, and I'm pretty sure it's done that for you also. It's
Yes.
reminded me of how much I learned how to wait. I learned how to wait to sleep. I learned how to wait them to wake up, when to poo, were they going to, their playtime, and then it got to they were going to school, so I was waiting them for them at school, and then at sport. And then as they get to teenagers, waiting for them to have an outburst of emotional blah blah.
Yes.
The waiting covers up who
Yeah.
we are as women when we are mothers. And that's, for me, it really did affect how I ran my businesses, the amount of time I spent in my businesses. Do you want to go
Yes.
into that a little tiny bit? Because you're in a similar situation to me, is you have kids who have kids.
Yes.
And there's a whole new learning and awareness that comes with that.
Yeah. And I had a very unique experience where I lived with my son and daughter-in-law she was pregnant with twins. And I had just started Coffee with Kim. I literally picked up everything and moved into a little room in their house, and I did it from there. And I was running the household because she was flat in bed, not able to do anything. There was a 2-year-old running around, and I was doing. I feel like I had gone through the twilight zone back in time to when I was doing this, and I got to practice how I would do it differently.
Hmm.
And I loved how what you said is I learned how to take care of me. There was times even then I would hit the wall, right? I was just emotionally, physically tired. If I didn't go for a walk, if I didn't take a time out, if I didn't do these things, I was feeling the effect on my body, my emotions, right? Those outbursts. And because I wanted to practice doing it differently, it made all the difference in the world. And having that business, and I was running not only Coffee with Kim, but I was still running our other large business with my brother at that time. So I was taking orders, I was talking with customers, so I was doing all of that too.
Isn't it amazing how we can spread ourselves thin?
Yes.
So thin that we actually, we really truly are running on adrenaline.
Yes.
And for me, I noticed last year when I was doing very, very, very similar, 2 houses, 3 businesses, 2 grandchildren, dancing between daughters' expectations and the new way of bringing up children now. It's very, very different.
It's very different.
It's so different. And for me, it's like I had to just let go of any expectations and just go, okay, this is what's happening today. This is where we're at today. How can I do this differently? And some nights I would drive home, and I didn't stay there at nighttime because I'm 10 minutes drive away. I would drive home crying. Did I do
Yes.
this right? I would be self-questioning myself. I would be doubting myself. Those fears would come up is, can I keep doing this for me,
Yes.
for them,
Yeah. Yes.
for this little tiny baby, and for this daughter that I brought up?
Wow.
So it uncovered a lot of insecurities in my own self that I thought were gone. I thought were healed. You know, we've many of us now have done a lot of personal development on ourselves, and it's like we often feel that we have healed those main big chunks of patterns and those hurts and fears as we have grown older. But for me, as I have gone into more grandmothering, I realize that it's time for me to heal again on a different level. And that's what I
Yes.
did last year.
Yes. And you and I've talked, and I've experienced some of that again this year. And it's just that those layers, right? I I look back and not having, having someone who even had some semblance of how to take care of yourself physically, right? I didn't have that example. Not that, everyone has that, but I had to search out for that. How to take care of the mental piece. I didn't have any of that until I got to the point where a doctor said to put your life in order because you're not going to live throughout the year.
Mm.
And the reason why this is my life work is I don't want mothers, I don't want women to bury themselves, that the shame, the expectations, the guilt, the fear, and that control of our kids. I almost lost my relationship even with a few of my children over that.
You know, one of the things that I found for me was I forgot to have fun.
Yes, I wrote that down.
I really had forgotten to have
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
And when I realized that at about the middle of last year, when I felt that I was on this downward slide, the little baby was 5 months old, 4 months old. And it's like I was going every day and I loved it. It was just an experience that I'm always going to cherish. And at the
Yes.
same time, I felt that I was taking on all of this responsibility again, and it wasn't necessary. Nothing, it's really not necessary. How can I have more fun in my life? And then I went to a bookshop and I bought a couple of little funny kids' books. It was way too old for him, but I read them and we laughed together. I played more music. I started to do sound healing with him. There were a lot of activities that I started to bring in that I had forgotten.
Yes.
That I just loved. And I found myself starting to laugh again, laugh at myself, and then laugh with just what was happening during the day. It totally changed the way that I was starting to meet my challenges.
Wow. You and I are so connected.
So don't you think, though, that it's like once we go, yes, we can laugh at this and we can laugh at ourselves, it totally changes the way we start to mother and the way
Yes.
we have this perception. It's not so serious anymore. There are bigger problems on the planet.
Yes, and I was so uptight all the time, having to have my house a certain way, and
Yes.
just learning, like you said, the one of the things I wish I had done, which I'm doing more now when I don't get to see my grandchildren 10 minutes down the road, unfortunately, but when I do is having that fun and being
Yeah.
silly and
Yes.
giggling and laughing, and if there's a mistake or something spills or breaks, oh well,
It's just a broken glass. It's just a
yeah,
broken plate. It doesn't matter. And
wow,
that's when for me, I felt that my energy really did change and I could start to grow again.
yes,
I felt that I was going more and more and more in, and I couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't figure it out. I was too far in myself. And it
yes,
wasn't until I realized, oh, where is my fun? Where is my funny side gone? It had
yeah,
been buried. It was a bit like, oh, whoa, it's a bit like, that continual rushing and waiting and that paradox of rushing, waiting, rushing, waiting, rushing, waiting. I was like serious, no fun. Serious, no fun.
Yes, that's me. Yeah.
So I think for me, if there was one thing that I could say to anybody, whether they're a father, whether they're a mother, are you having enough fun every day? Are you putting things in your life that you actually laugh at?
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing too is being that kid. When I'm with my granddaughter, we do crafts now. And we would do, watercolors or painting, and I'll take her to the store and we'll just find these kids and be messy, and who cares if we use all the paint, if it dumps out or whatever. And I looked back on that in my life and I was like, I was so uptight and serious, like you said, and just bringing that inner child out in us too, right,
Yeah.
Di?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And actually, one of my kids said to me on the weekend, she said it to her son. She said, well, we can always guarantee going home dirty from Dee Dee and Rob's house. So I'm Dee Dee for my grandchildren. And my husband's name is Rob, so they call him Rob. And so they can always guarantee that they're going to come home dirty. And it's like, well, that's what happens because we always have fun. We're always out in nature, which I think is a huge thing.
Huge.
It's gigantic. We do live in the city now compared to bringing our kids up in the country, but we have beautiful parks here. Yes. And the beach. We live near the beach. So how can we just take a deep breath and get out in nature? And of course the processional effect of that is that actually changes the cells and the whole organization of how we feel and then how we perceive of how some of the decisions that we're making in our business, in our primary relationships with our kids. It totally changes us.
Yes, 100%. Oh, I love this part of the conversation. Yes, because
I think we forget it. I think we forget so many things when we grow up as adults. It has to be serious. We have a mortgage to pay off over our life, most of us.
Yes.
And then we have these expectations of other people of what we should have and what we shouldn't have and where we should live and all this stuff.
Yes, stuff, right?
And it is stuff. If only we could see what is the funny side of life and how can we laugh at ourselves?
Yes. And if we could teach our children to laugh at themselves, you wouldn't have these children just so worried about their schooling or their grades. I mean,
or how they look.
Or how they look, 100%. Yes. Yeah. Or if somebody, makes fun of them or says something to them, or they're like, instead of and letting it just move past them rather than, oh, am I that way? And becoming that serious, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Joel just said, yeah, same thing here. The adults have selective amnesia. And I did have selective amnesia.
Yes.
I really felt that I had forgotten who I was, where I had come from, and how to just be me.
Yes. And what is that? Because that being me that changes.
Yes.
Right?
I think that's another thing in our toolbox, and I know that you do this as well, is what are your needs? What do you need now? I need stuff so totally different than what I did when I was 19, 20 when I got married. Yes. And then I had little babies in my 20s.
Me too.
I don't need the same stuff. It's changed.
Nope. Yes.
I need more fun. I need more like these sorts of conversations. Meaningful conversations to me are really important.
They are everything.
Yeah.
And the fact that you and I can connect and across the world, time zones, and I feel just as close to you as I would if you were standing right here.
Isn't it amazing how we can develop that connection?
Yes.
And I think that comes from just allowing us to go, this is what is on the top of my head.
Yes.
This is where I've come from. We don't have to practice anything because this is our experience. Yes. And I think that's what Charmaine is saying here. It's like she goes with the flow.
Yes.
But the paradox to that is I realize that if I continue to go with this flow 6 months ago, I would not have ended up in the position that I was at the end of the year, because I realized that going with the flow was taking me more into myself. I had to start standing up. I had to start saying no, I can't come until this time. Or actually, really, I don't think that this app is quite spot on here. How can we use our intuition for what this baby might need right now?
Oh my goodness, intuition. We have generations that have gone away from it, and they have it. We all have it, but they have lost the recognition of it.
Yes. And, I've just finished reading this book. It's called Breathe. And it's called Breathe, but it's about breathing, but it's also about the way humans have changed over millions of years, like 300 million years. And this guy has put together a dossier of research. And it's how we have changed as human beings by the way that we now breathe, because of the way that we have now taken our foods and what we do every day to a very different way of how we did it 300,000 years ago. Of course, the world has changed, but sometimes the world doesn't change in a good way.
Yes.
And so a little snippet of that book is that when people first started to learn yoga, it was all about the control of breath, whereas now we all think that we are breathing and chewing with our these new trends in food and raw and veganism and all this, and how many people do Pilates and yoga and Qigong, and the toolbox goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But does it come down to how are we able to control our breathing, which affects the sinus, the width of our sinus, the width of our face, the shape of our mouth, the nasal cavity, and how it's able to purify and moisten our air as to going into our lungs, rather than most of us mouth breathe.
Wow, that is fascinating.
It is a huge subject that I have studied for years, but this book really put it all into a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
What is his name?
Well, anyway, how often do we realize that we hold our breath?
We hold our breath, or we overbreathe.
Wow. I probably hold my breath more.
If we were like to sit here and practice and be aware of our breath, if you were to breathe and shut your mouth.
Okay.
Breathe in 5 counts, and then breathe out 5 counts through your nose.
I'm going to fall asleep.
How much of that air went into the bottom of your lungs, and how much stayed up here?
Yeah.
Most of us breathe. You are putting a little bit more air, which is making you yawn.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not talking about, a specific tool here, but I just threw this in because I think that by going back and seeing where we have come from personally, which I call ballistics, which comes from my study with Buckminster Fuller years and years and years ago, is that it helps us to really see, well, where have we come from? Why are we like we are? Then it gives us choices to make the changes. And it's the same as what this guy did. He went back and studied all over the planet and brought these studies together of how human beings have evolved and how the shapes of our faces have changed. The size of our brains have got bigger, which means that our face and our jaw is smaller, our mouth is smaller, our tunnels into our brain is smaller, so we have less oxygen, we exhale less carbon dioxide. It's a fascinating subject.
It is very fascinating. Oh my goodness. Now you make me yawn.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I always find it fascinating because you always have great things for us to read.
Yes, I think that and you can always look it up on the internet and then follow that way. I don't have Peter, somebody I thought his name was, but yeah. So where are we at? We've gone half an hour into here. So how can we, Kim, expand on what we have talked about, because we've sort of gone all over the place,
Yes.
and how can we, go, okay, what is it if we were to say run a workshop, if we were to run a workshop on motherhood and business, what would be some of those topics that we would feel that would be of a huge benefit for anybody? It's not just motherhood, but we're taking our experience of motherhood and business and putting it into, say, a 3-day. What would be some of those subjects? Because I think that some of those subjects then we could expand on if we have time right now, but it would help us and the people that are here and the people that are going to watch in the future and the people that will read our blogs, etc., to go, okay, yes, I'd not really thought about that in the connection of motherhood and business.
Well, I think that there's more of a connection. As I started writing my own notes about all this, and we've hit several of them.
Yeah.
The one thing that I wish I had when I went, if I were to go back in time, what I probably would have done a little differently is, because at one point I was working at the high school, I had 6 children, my husband traveled, and I was running a business. All of that at the same time.
That's busy, man.
Yes. So I wish the first thing I would have done is had a practice or ritual for taking care of me. Because I think my children, now that they're older, and the things that as they look back and the things that we've discussed over time, is they saw me not take care of myself. And so when I'm running a business, if I'm taking care of my children, I have to take care of me, or else I won't be here. And so having just a simple, nothing big, but you and I have talked about some of these rituals of how to eat, how to move our bodies, even if it's just a walk around the block, or pushing a stroller, getting up a little bit early, but I'm so exhausted. But having that time that if you do take care of your body, you do have more energy, you have better health, so you're not feeling run down and sick, and then that affects your mental, because our physical does affect our mental. In business, I wish I'd had a mentor. I would have looked for a mentor and learned how to read, listen, just absorb as much things to fill my bucket. Because when my bucket was filled, I had more to give. So that's a few of them. I hope I didn't take too much of the time, but expectations. I expected so much of myself. And there's a lot of shame as well.
And I think for me, I wasn't able to express myself because of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, my tip would be is to learn to laugh at yourself, learn to observe those thoughts, learn to just let those thoughts go past your brain.
Yes.
And have a look and see, do I want to hang on to that?
Mm-hmm.
Let them go through our emotional buttons and go, gee, do I need to go and have a session with somebody or do some work on this particular piece of shame, which allows me to stay away from vulnerability, which then stops me from sharing who really I am. And it stops me from sharing the stories with my kids, which helps them to get through their stage of life.
Yes. I think sharing with them and being very real. I mean, there was times that I did do that, but having them know what adulting really is. Because but it's very different time. But the other thing too is, it's a cliche word. People call it boundaries and triggers and stuff. I call it teaching people how you want to be treated. And I just allowed people to impose things on me that made me feel worse and worse and worse. And it showed up in all different ways of my life, outbursts, anger, screaming. I mean, there was times in my motherhood that I was a big yeller and screamer. I'll admit it.
You had 6 kids and businesses, and not that that's any excuse, but I think that we would all, if we were honest, put our hands up to that, because we were stretched to the max.
Yes.
There was no time for me. I did yoga every morning, and I have photos of me doing yoga before my second baby was born. And there's my
Wow.
4-year-old there doing yoga with me.
I love that.
So I must have known, and this is like 42 years ago now, I must have known that I was struggling because I had to take that time for myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I had those babies in an era where my mother and mother-in-law, they weren't backward in telling me what I was not good at. They were very forward of telling me how I was to look after my husband and a house and my children.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
I think and I hope I am more discreet than that.
Yeah. I
And more
always
mindful.
try. I'm very mindful because of my own personal experience.
Yeah.
And I'm very supportive in the way. And I also ask them, how can I support you? I ask them that because what I think they might need isn't what they need.
I can remember saying when both my kids became mums, I don't know what to do here. I can remember saying that. And I actually write in a Mother's Day card every year for my girls. And I say the truth at the time of whatever is in my sphere of energy at the time. And my girls have always said, these cards are quite remarkable.
Oh.
Because it's that little bit of an insight of who I am as a person that sometimes we forget to have it. We don't often have conversations. We're having conversations about the kids, or where we might all like to go for our next family holiday, or
Yes.
are we going to go camping? I like to have those conversations with our kids and our family so that we've got something there to look forward to as together. And so we forget to have these conversations of really things that they can glean little bits of, that they can take from me and maybe put into their life without me lecturing in any way or being a mum in any way. I'm being me. I'm not being their friend. And I think that's a big difference.
Yes. And
I'm not their friend.
no, you're their mom.
I'm their mum. And
Yep.
I'll always be their mum. And I think that is a big thing for women as mothers to come to grips with.
It's difficult. And especially
it's a difficult transition.
It is. Every stage for me, and boys and girls, because I have 4 boys and 2 girls. And I had all these boys, so I understood the boy thing, and then I get to the girl thing and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. And I kept thinking, with my oldest daughter, she probably got the brunt of my growth process. Because I didn't know really what to do. And I probably wasn't always the best example of her to see what a strong woman was.
I think what I showed my girls was how to be too strong.
Yeah.
How to be too systemized. How to be too perfect.
How
to have everything in order.
Okay.
And so I have had to spend the last 20 years going into myself to relax and really find out who I was as a little girl.
Yes.
And bring out that carefree that I did never really know. I didn't really never know that as a child. I was the oldest of, 7 boys. And it's like, I was always taking care of things. That's what I remember.
I was the oldest of 4.
Yeah, it's like.
Yeah.
So I think as mothers and as fathers and as people that influence other people generally, how can we really go back in time to uncover who we are. I mean, I know that sounds cliche. I wish I had another term. That's why I use ballistics.
Yeah, but it is. And for me, it's taken a long time because there's a lot of things I've shut out. There's a lot of things I don't remember. I have a friend that I grew up with from the time we were 3 years old, and she says, "Remember this or remember this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't remember."
Yeah, I don't either. I've come across a whole group of primary school friends, which I think you and I have spoken about, and they say, "Oh, I remember this, and I remember going to your house to watch this TV show, and your mum used to cook this." I go, "I don't remember any of that. It was too painful for me."
Yes, me too.
It was so painful for me. And I think Joel's just saying here, we have a lot of strong women here. I think that strength is a cover up of what is not wanting to come out so that they can show their awkwardness.
Yeah.
And the unknownness. That takes courage.
It does. It really does. And I think when we get to the life experiences that you and I have had, it's like, you know what? You kept asking, why am I doing what I'm doing? I want to be able to leave my children. And I mean, years ago, probably 8 years ago, I had a friend and I told her, I said, "I'm just going to create all these videos and all these things. And then when my kids are dead, then they can learn from me." And she goes, "Are you crazy?" She goes, "They need it now."
Yeah, they do need it now.
They do. And that's why I'm creating what I'm doing now. Because and it's not just for my children. It's when I taught, I remember specifically being in I was substitute. And so I would just go in and I'd fly by the seat of my pants in these classrooms. But I would set the expectation first in the room, and then I would show them an increase of love. And one of the teachers asked me once, there was a bunch of really tough kids in that class. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, was that just the worst day ever?" And I said, "No. They asked me if I could be their teacher." And I found that if you really show love, true, genuine love, that people feel that and they attach to that. And I think that is the foundation of all change.
And I think if we are able to come into an environment very grounded in our own love and our own support, self-support and self-acceptance, that does it. People go, "What's happening here? It's a bit foreign now."
Yeah.
Because people come in as being strong and being, this is what's going to happen today, and this is, all this intellectual stuff, and the energy gets lost.
It does. I think it was interesting when I really recently I came into a situation where I had 25 years of experience on something, and I stepped back because somebody else was kind of in charge, but they were kind of like doing it. And finally, there was a moment where I had to kind of take charge and say, "Okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to do," because of the wisdom and experience of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Without going into the details of everything.
Within the detail. Yeah. Yeah. And I have no doubt that the way you presented that was, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And this is how it's going to run today, because I have had 25 years experience. You would have come in from a very different angle.
Yes.
And you would have come in from, I would come in from an angle of, this is how I think that it could work today. I've seen these results and I'd really love to see if it can work here. How would you do that?
Very similar. It's just
because I think
out
the
of
way
love, and
we
it has to be a
articulate
love.
it, yes.
Yes.
But I think I avoid the word, and I know that people may be shocked at this. I actually avoid the word love. I avoid the word love because I think it's actually overused.
I can
And
see
this
that.
last, in this last maybe about 7 or 8 months, I have been aware of how can I articulate the sense of love through a story.
Okay, so help us with that.
So, like what we just did, like we just both did just then, is
Okay.
how can I come into a situation for people to feel it, and then maybe the
Experience
word.
it.
Absolutely.
Experience it, yes.
And actually, I had a girlfriend come and do a walk one day with me here. And I take my dog for a walk at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We walk for maybe an hour and a half. And she came and joined me one day, and she's a principal of one of the local schools. And she said to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted today. It's so hard to keep the sense of love in my school." And I just hugged her.
Oh.
Because she said that the sense of leadership is so driven by self-interest, and that environment of love and support and self-acceptance is in those environments so difficult and a challenge to keep permeating so people can experience it.
Yes.
And we had this big, long, strong conversation about this exactly. It took up, a good hour. And that's exactly what we're talking here. She's a mum, she's a wife, she's a principal of a school. We're all talking the same thing, and it's a difficult job. It's a difficult job to hold that space because that's all there is.
It is all there is.
Yeah. Isn't it great to have a little bit of silence?
Yes. Isn't it interesting that so many people have a hard time with that?
People do. And that's why often people, when they feel that there's something happening in the space, they'll laugh or they'll make a joke or they'll come up with a smart aleck remark or they'll come up with some egotistical comment about something. And it often then takes the group energy in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as mothers and as business owners, when we get to this stage of being able to keep bouncing from that space within ourselves, our businesses truly do thrive because it's a reflection of us.
It's because I think we have learned to allow and have learned to surrender.
Mm.
And that is something that for me will be a lifelong practice.
It absolutely is a lifelong practice, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Because our natural inclination is to control, when in essence there is no control.
So many articles I've read in this last couple of years as to why people have been anxious with this pandemic is because they cannot control their lives.
I had a hard time understanding that at the beginning because during the pandemic, I was actually jealous because I saw people, getting to reorganize a closet in their home. And I was studying and I was keeping our business going in a very different way, rather than it was face to face. I was having to find ways to contact people online and on phone more often, and where they were used to seeing me face to face. And it was very different needs at that time. But I think because I had done so much work and had those tools, I was like, it didn't bother me, but I've learned to enjoy being alone too. I need that time.
Mm. Kim, I'm going to interrupt this oh no, he's going to leave it. I have a package coming and he's just left it at the door, but I was told that I would have to sign for it. And I was hoping, please don't bring this package while I'm on with Kim. But anyway, he's left it. So that's very cool. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah. You probably saw my eyes wandering while I was talking. I could see him coming down the driveway. Yeah. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. Thank you. So, how can we wrap this up?
I would like to hear more from people. I know what I needed, but I'd like to really know what other people need. I would love to have people respond to this conversation and start this conversation. I think we're doing this is starting this conversation.
Mm.
What what is needed in the time that we live in right now? I know just from some of my experiences with daughter-in-laws and my daughters, but I really would like to hear what people have to say. If we're even on point with the things that we've said today.
Mm. I feel that we are on point, but that's us two in our little bubble.
Exactly. I don't
And
think things change, Di, but I don't know if they change that dramatically in the fundamentals.
when you say the fundamentals, where I go is that things don't change because the basis of all our need is love, and then
Yes.
air, and then water, and then food, and then a house, and etc., etc., etc. But if we don't get that love, if we are not able to take the time to be able to facilitate that for ourselves, and let's face it, when we were having babies, it was brand new. Personal development in Perth, Western Australia, it was new.
Yes.
40 years ago, it was new.
Yes.
Yes, people were traveling the world, teaching, you know, how to take your mask off was one workshop that I did. Another one was, identifying your patterns and coming up with tools. And I mean, the workshops went on and on and on and on. That was 40 years ago. It was new.
Yeah,
It's now part of our language.
it is. It is.
And I
And
think that that's what's confusing. And I think it's confusing for younger generations is that they hear this and they've heard it all their life. However, have they actually taken some time out to figure out what is it that they need?
my daughter and I had been spending a lot of time together in the last few months, and she's transitioning to a new position, one that I'm very familiar with. And she was like, "Mom, my whole life, of what I remember these last 12 years, because she was about 9 or 10 when I started this journey." And she's like, "For the first time, I understand what tools are." She goes, "I understand what you do."
Mm,
And she's like, "It has so much to do with how I look at things, how I react to things." And she goes, "There's so much more to it than just picking up a book."
yeah. Or going to a yoga class.
Yes.
That's not even touching the edge in
No.
my paradigm.
Yeah.
Conversations like this help to bring the edge in a little bit further to ourselves.
Yes. Yes. But I think we have sometimes a hard time cracking open that, like you talked earlier about, that vulnerability.
Mm,
And how will they perceive me? How will they think? What will they think about me?
mm,
Rather than just knowing that, I'm not going to be for everybody, and that's okay.
yeah. And we won't be for everybody if we don't know who we are, if we can't come from who we are. And I think the phrase is when we can come from ourselves rather than getting to know ourselves. Those two pieces of language are quite different. It's like so often these days now we use language that actually covers up really what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't know how to articulate it.
Well, we
Sometimes I
don't.
don't. Sometimes I don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just from a feeling.
And that's why I often stop in these presentations and let the silence be there for even a couple of seconds and then re-articulate something. Not apologize about it, just re-articulate it.
Yeah. No, because it's different.
So we've touched on a lot of points today. We've touched on, our challenges and that survival to thrive. We've touched on that joy of having fun. We've touched on some of the tools that we have used, and actually that we really do need a toolbox.
Yes.
That we can go to and pull out something quite physical sometimes, like the phone tool that you shared. Journaling. Do we journal occasionally in our lives? Have we ever journaled? There's so many thousands of tools out there. What are the tools that you use, we use to help us to...
I think so. We talk about tools a lot, and people are going to think, at least I did years ago, think, oh, it had to be something major, monumental. Like the few that you talked about, the writing, that's a tool I used way at the beginning, just to get that there's a connection between the hand and the brain that is way different than the typing.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. And so that's why I have books and books and books of notes and journaling and free writing, however you want to call it. Some people don't like the word that I've talked to before. They don't like the word journal. That's fine. Try free writing, writing notes down, however you want to put it. But people, when they start working on this, they're like, well, this is simple. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
And I see it as, I often use the word with myself of unraveling.
Yes, I love that.
I love that word because it makes me be okay. I'm not broken.
No. Heavens
and
no.
we often see things of when we feel broken. We are not broken. We are human beings with feelings.
Yes.
And as mothers, we then take on responsibilities and then learn how to wait and how to rush and how to take care and how to be bossy and how to sometimes step back but then how to control. And we learn all this stuff. And then we get to a stage in our life where we don't need to be mothering anymore, but we're not a friend. We then need to uncover. So we've covered a lot today.
We have.
That I think we need to keep unraveling.
Yes, I would love that.
Yes. And maybe that can be our subject of when we speak, to broaden this out more, because I think that it's a huge subject that bumps into so many other aspects of running a business, being a female, being a human being.
Yes. And I think sometimes I've also learned in business, we feel like we have to be perfect to start. And sometimes we feel like we're pushing when really we just need to allow.
Yeah. And start.
Mm-hmm. We don't have to have it perfect to start. I kept feeling I had to do everything. And starting Coffee with Kim was probably my biggest aha moment in not having to have things perfect. And things will evolve and they will change, and you'll learn as you go. And it will emerge. It will emerge.
And we do learn as we go because we're human beings. That's what we do.
Yes.
But yet we've been set up academically, I think, that is not the way we go about life. We do this and we learn this and we go in this straight line. That's actually such a myth of living.
It is. I totally agree with you.
Such a myth.
Yeah.
So what have you taken away? If anybody has some gems that they are taking away, can they write in the chat? And Kim, what are you taking away from today?
I'm going deeper on our conversation of unraveling the past. right? Sometimes I didn't want to go back into the past because of all the stuff that it brings up. A lot of the hurt, the uncertainties, the anger. And I'm starting to unravel more of that so that I can say, okay, I notice I do this, and what is it as a result of? And then what do I want to replace it with? If I want to, it's like replacing a hole, right? If I'm going to take something out to change and not have anymore, I need to replace it with something different.
And for me, on that unraveling, is what I'm taking away from what you're saying right now is that the ability to be able to unravel on the spot, because I am going to see my daughters again tomorrow or the next day or today. And if I get a button pressed or if I want to say something, do I have the courage of vulnerability to be able to say it, that I trust myself enough to say it in a way that is of a higher power?
Agreed.
Because I think sometimes it does come down to self-trust, and we don't trust ourselves to be able to say something that is new. Because they still see us as their mums.
Yes, but the other thing I've also used as well that's been very powerful is I'm going to say, I want to say something, and I may say it wrong, and it might be very messy, but would you help me unpack this?
Mm-hmm.
And if you come from a place like that where the expectation is I don't have the language, I don't know how to relay this in a way that may not be hurtful, and can we do this together? That has been a powerful tool for me.
And that's a very beautiful way of doing it, is putting that that preset in before to set up an expectation.
Yeah.
Which is really taking away expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's been powerful for me.
I think for today, I'm taking away that this whole notion of how we as mothers and how we as women and how we as human beings are so seemingly trapped in a certain way. And to go, as Charmaine said at one point, to go with the flow, but to at the same time be able to do it from really who we have uncovered and are uncovering at that particular time. One of my friends that I walk with at the beach, he said to me one day, because he was applying for, or somebody actually asked him to do some work. I think he's an architect. And he said, I'm really deciding whether I'm going to take the work, because he believes that when you get to a certain stage of life, you start to reconcile your lifestyle to your financial situation. Mm-hmm. And yes, the money would be handy for him, but did he want to miss out on these walks to the beach at the time that he wanted to?
Yes.
And I often think of that as a bit of a summary today, is if only we could reconcile more from who we are in every second to where we want to go. That's a pretty big ask. We're so busy.
It's a very big ask. A very big ask.
And I think conversations like this help us to reconcile And some people say, and I've had people ask me this before, what does reconciliation mean? It means making a peace, means ticking off the boxes.
But it doesn't mean that when you reconcile to something, when I've talked with others about this, that word, is they think it's, oh, well, I'm just settling, right? It's just saying, okay, to me, it's an acknowledgement of where I am. And then yet, what steps am I going to take to get where I want to be?
Yes. Consciously.
Yes.
Consciously. Yes. I think the word reconciliation to me is being conscious.
Yes.
Is to stop and take the time to reconcile. And I can use the word reconcile quite confidently because, I do systems for our event production business. I prepare our statements for our accountants. So I'm very used to reconcile and finding things that are lost and putting them over here, or they should be on this side rather than that side. Our life is the same. And you would be too. It's business.
Yes. No, that is a great analogy.
And I hear so many women say, oh, I don't think of the financials. Well, hey, honey, it's the reconciling that puts the honey on your table. Get real.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being present here. And I look forward to the comments of the people that we share this with. And I also then look forward to re-evaluating where we are now, but also then unraveling certain important issues in this whole topic of motherhood and business, mothers and daughters in business, women and business. And it's funny, one of my friends from Riyadh just texted me like the other day on the weekend, and she sent me a thing that she wants me to go and speak at in March. She said, there's such a huge hole. And I go, really? There's a hole in women entrepreneurialism? You see it all over the place. She said, no, people can't do it. People are not doing it. People don't have the distinctions that you have. You have the experience. You have to be at this conference.
Wow.
And so it's looks like I'm going to travel again.
That's wonderful.
Because I was thinking, well, there's so many other people doing what I do. But Kim, there's not. There's people that know the terms because it's around now. There's people with very few distinctions that can come from a very holistic point of view and be able to put them together. Like you said at the beginning of this, you're putting together your life's work.
Yeah.
And I want to support you to do that.
Well, thank you. And I want to support you. And I love that we have the relationship and the support with one another that we do. I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, me too. And I'd love more women and men to be able to join us on this level.
Yes.
Most and some will not join on this level because it's awkward.
Yes.
It's quite awkward.
Yes. And there's like you said, there's the vulnerability aspect.
Yeah. So, Kim, thank you very much for your time today. And
thank you.
Let's see how this evolves.
I know. This is going to be fun.
I'm excited.
I am too.
Thank you for being here. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
And thank you, everybody, for being here. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.